Hey Bat fans, Luke here, ready to Bat Chat about the Bat, and today we're going to take a look at Batman Black and White, and this is Volume 1, this is actually part of 4 collected volumes, and the reason behind I wanted to do this video is I read the lead up to the wedding, the prelude to the wedding, and the final issue was Harley versus Joker, which I actually thought was pretty good, and I was going to do a video on it. And I kind of decided against it, only because I don't have a whole lot to say about it, so it would have been a relatively short one. And I was thinking maybe combining with Detective Comics, but I really didn't want to talk about Detective Comics either, because this issue just came out, first one dealing with Black Lightning. To be honest, it wasn't terrible, but really didn't really wow me either, so I'm kind of wondering if we just treading around until we get the next permanent creative team on it, because I don't know what's going on Detective, because we're going to have Brian Hill on it, and he's not bad. Then we have James Robinson after him for, I guess, a short amount of time. And I really do think we're just treading water till we get to issue 1000. So, may or may not have a whole lot to say about Detective Comics for a little bit, unless something really wows me. But going back to the Harley and Joker Prelude to the Wedding issue, I thought it was okay. It was actually pretty decent. But I was watching one reviewer on it, kind of give his thoughts. I forget who it was. But he basically said something to the effect that really I didn't really agree with a whole lot of. He basically said something effective, it's only a one and done issue. What really can you do? He wasn't really all that blown away with it, but he kind of blamed the fact that, hey, this is just a one and done. I mean, what can you really do? And this is where I take some argument with that, because that was more than a 22-page story. And I thought he did okay of a job, but to sit there and say that you really can't give a really good story or really be able to tell everything you kind of wanted to tell it, or kind of get after a theme or a concept, whatever, in just one issue, that everything's got to be done in the sprawling epic, or for the stories collected for the trade type of thing. I kind of took argument with that. And that's what kind of motivated me to kind of give this video review of Batman Black and White, because if you're unfamiliar with Batman Black and White, these are short stories to the nth degree. They're 8-page stories. That's basically all they are. You might have a issue of Batman Black and White, and they might have 5 stories in it, and then 5 stories each, 8 pages. And if you're the concept behind Batman Black and White, and I kind of want to give credit to a good friend of mine, Joshua Hayes, who I was actually watching one of his reviews of Batman Black and White. He did the single issues during the New 52. The first 3 collective volumes happened before the New 52, by the way. He basically gave the concept of, the behind Batman Black and White. It's basically giving the creative team the artist and the writer and the artist, hey, if you could tell any Batman story you wanted to in 8 pages, what would you do? And these stories are really loose in continuity. And here in this collective volume, there are some that kind of push the boundaries a little bit. But it's any Batman story you want to tell, you have 8 pages, go. And with some of these 8-page stories, they're phenomenal, and they are standalone stories. And if someone can do it in 8 pages, or someone can read something and get a good complete story in 8 pages as a standalone, the whole argument of, it's a standalone issue, what really can you really do in it? There's really nothing you can do. I just hate to say it, that's hogwash. Because we have here, this whole book is 20 stories, each of them 8 pages long, and they're all really concise, complete stories that either go through a theme or kind of a look at a different aspect of Batman one, and it does so really, really well. And while I'm only talked to a couple of stories in this trade, all of them are good. So to sit there and kind of give the one and done story a negative connotation in that you really can't do nothing with it, I disagree, and here's the proof. But anyway, Batman Black and White. This is Volume 1, covered by Jim Lee. Again, this one has 20 stories in it, and the creative team within these stories is you're gonna be like, what? I'll just kind of run through because this is crazy. Let's see. You have the first story, which is done by Ted McNever and John Workman's story called Perpetual Mourning. Then we have Bruce Timm doing a story called Two of a Kind. Then we have Joe Kubert doing The Hunt. Then we have Howard Chaykin doing a story called Petty Crimes. Then we have The Devil's Trumpet, written by Archie Goodwin and art by Jose Munoz. Then we have Legend, which is done by Walter Simonson. Then we have a story called Monster Maker, which is written by John Strand, illustrated by Richard Corbin. Then we have The Devil's Children, written by famed Batman writer Chuck Dixon, with art by Jorge Safino. Then we have a story called A Black and White World, written by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Simon Beasley. Then we have Good Evening Midnight, which is written in art by Claus Johnson. Then we have In Dreams, written by Andrew Helfer, with illustrations by Libator. Then we have The Heist, written by Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner, name should sound familiar from the videos I've done. Night of the Monster Men, and the sequel to that one, Mad Monk. Then we have a story called Bent Twigs, written and drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. Then we have Denny O'Neil doing a song called A Sleighing Song Tonight, with art by Ted Christensen. Then we have a story called An Innocent Guy by Brian Boland. Then we have Monsters in the Closet, written by John Strand, illustration by Kevin Nolan. Then we have a story called Heroes. This is written by Archie Goodwin, with art by Gary Gianni. Then we have Leave Taken, written by Denny O'Neil, illustration by Brian Stelfreeze. Then we have Third Mask, written by, I'm going to butcher the whole name, so I'll just give the last name, Otomo. And again, these are all one-and-done stories, and again, they're all good. I just kind of want to highlight give some quick thoughts on just a few of them, because they're really, really good stories, and I don't want to be here for a whole hour. But probably one of my favorite is a story called Two of a Kind. This was the one done by Bruce Timm. And as you're going through this story, this is just going to if you love the animated series, you're going to love this story. Because again, it does have not only the art that gives the look of the animated series, but if you remember the origin story behind Harvey Dent in the animated series, is going to have that kind of bit of a feel. And what we have here in this story is that Harvey Dent is actually cured by a woman cosmologist that physically cures the Joker of his face deformity, and he gets some help psychologically as well, and he's been reformed, he's been released, but we find out that this person that helped him actually has a twin sister, which is like the polar opposite of her, which the person kind of kept as a secret away from Harvey, because she didn't want the persona of Two-Face kind of reemerged because of this duality with her and her twin sister. And it turns out to be sort of like a love triangle in a way, and it is kind of a sad, tragic end. You do see the reemergence of Two-Face, and I don't want to give the twist at the very end, because it's a great story. You feel sympathy for Harvey in this, because he's reformed, he has a nice girl, gonna get ready to settle down, but he makes some bad choices, and those bad choices actually comes back to haunt him. And you do see again like the reemergence of Two-Face, and instead of this time not an acid bath to the face, rather he goes and gets ashes from the fireplace and burns his face. And again, I don't want to sit there and ruin the rest of that story, because you have to read it, and they're 8 pages long. So it was awesome. Just a great story. Again, if you love the animated series, you're going to love that story. And it's a great Two-Face story. The next one I kind of want to talk about is a story called The Devil's Children. This one is written by Chuck Dixon, with art by Jorge Safino. And this one, it's a really good story, and it's a good detective story, in that basically what's happening there is kind of like this mobster who's got, there's a power plant in Gotham, and this person's trying to get to the top, and he's kind of eliminating the competition, but he's doing so by kind of planting evidence, kind of framing other individuals that he's killed in the past. And this is Batman working with Commissioner Gordon in 8 pages to tell a good detective story. And it goes back to that thing I was saying before. Just because it's a standalone doesn't mean you can't tell a complete, informative story. And this is 8 pages. So, it was great. It had like a really noir-ish feel to it. And a really good detective story. Again, 8 pages. And look at the art in this as well, too. So, great job. By the creative team on this one, again by Chuck Dixon and Jorge Safino, telling a great detective story in just 8 pages, complete too, and it all makes sense. It all wraps up at the end. Batman uses forensics capabilities to solve the crime. It's just great. Next one. This one I enjoyed the hell out of. This one is done. Story called Black and White World. This one is written by Simon Beasley. Art by Simon Beasley, written by Neil Gaiman. And this one is a Joker and Batman story, but it's done with a twist. Imagine your comic characters in that they're the personas they play in the comics is kind of like their full-time job, but it's not the person they are. Think of it's kind of like a TV show. Where the Joker is obviously who he is on screen, but off screen, he's just the everyday regular guy. Same thing with Batman. And basically half this story is like the Batman and Joker ready to do their scene on a show, but they're waiting for Commissioner Gordon to do his spot, and they're kind of like in the green room, and they're kind of going over the lines, rehearsing, talking, actually kind of being real friendly. And as they go through and they rehearse their lines, you're enjoying it, and it's like, it's funny because again they're kind of going through kind of half-assed a little bit, but again they're friendly to each other, and this is just the Batman and Joker persona is a persona at that. It's not who they really are, so they're kind of acting who they are in the comic book world, and then they actually go live and they actually go through and act everything they kind of rehearse in the story. It was just awesome, and then it kind of wraps up them kind of going off scene and talking about, how there's this one image right here. It's Batman going through the window to go after the Joker, and the Joker even mentions that, hey, that was a heck of a one-page splash you got there coming through the window. I never get anything like that. And the Batman's like, well, you always got the great dialogue, and it was awesome. Neil Gaiman took a concept and ran with it. Again, awesome story, 8 pages. Again, it's defunks that whole concept. You can't tell really a complete formative story in just 8 pages. Next one I come on to talk about it was the one done by Bill Sienkiewicz, and this was Bent Twigs. This one was one that it was interesting in that basically what we have here is this father who's he has this kitten who just gave birth to a whole litter of, it was a cat who gave birth to a litter of kittens, but this is one that the parent didn't want, didn't really approve of. The parent, his son, kind of taking all these random cats in the roof, and then we have too many cats, and basically what he does is basically throws the cat off the roof and kind of kills the cat. And Batman initially takes issue with that, and you're kind of wondering, like, well, is this kind of like and I'm an animal lover. I love dogs. My dog recently passed away a couple years ago, and that stung. But I don't know if my Batman is kind of like the one that goes uber beating people down because of what kind of goes on in this issue. But Sienkiewicz kind of puts a twist in that, and the conversation that the person has with his son, and it goes into more than what I initially thought. It goes into more about being a positive example for your kids, and the reason why the kid's doing what he's doing is because he's afraid of his father and how his father reacts. And it kind of makes you kind of take a look at and reflect on, as a dad, am I being the positive role model that my kids need and want? It was a great thematic story coming from that lens. Is like Sienkiewicz just taking a thematic look on parenthood and the positive example we should all strive to be for our kids, and he used the moniker of the story just to really tell it done perfectly. And again, the art was great. The only thing I kind of held this one back a little bit was it was wordy. The captions, I mean, you got 8 pages to tell it, and Sienkiewicz took every almost inch possible to tell his story with the words. So a little wordy, a lot of dialogue in this, but I think it was kind of necessary because it was a story that he wanted to tell, and it did kind of require a lot of words. So that was an awesome story. The last one I'm going to wrap up with was a story by Brian Boland, and I think it's The Innocent Guy. Yeah, it's a story called The Innocent Guy. And Brian Boland, if you don't know who he is, hello, most notably the art and by The Killing Joke, and the art is great. Just the visuals in this is just fantastic. And what this is that there's a guy who's kind of given a recording of a show, not really a recording of a show, he's recording himself talking, and that he's like, everyone wants to be a good person, but there's always a little bit in us that wants to be bad, kind of want to break the rules a little bit, and he's going to take that kind of concept and he's going to push it to the nth degree, and then when he's going to go bad, he's going to go bad. He talks about kidnapping a little girl, potentially assassinating the Pope, but he ultimately wants to do is kill Batman. And it's him kind of recounting ways in that he can kind of follow and kind of gain intel on the way Batman does what he does. And when Batman's most vulnerable, he'll find a way to take him out by with a gunshot in this image right here. I don't want to go too much further into it because this is one you got to read. Again, it's 8 pages. Thematically, it's someone kind of good at heart, but there's a little bit of bad, and kind of like everyone. But this is the story of hey, let's take that little bit of bad event that's in everyone, and what happens is that little bit is just rotten to the core and anti-good in every form of fashion, and what happens behind it. Personally, looking at it as he's kind of narrating this story as he's recording it in front of the video, it reminded me of James Gordon Jr. a little bit. Obviously, my favorite Batman story ever. The Black Mirror had James Gordon Jr. and also we had a little bit recently with Batman Eternal. But it's thematically, it was a great story, and the art was great, and I cannot recommend this story enough. This was great. And again, 8 pages. So, again, there's, I think I touched about 4 stories in here. There's 16 others. This is a must-buy. This is a 5 out of 5. Highly recommend Batman Black and White. And again, it kind of defunks the thesis of, there's only so much you can do in a one-and-done story. And those pages, those books are 22 to 40 pages long. These are 8 pages, these stories. And they do the story justice, and you feel extremely satisfied. Again, takes liberty with continuity, whatnot, and these are ones you can just read one, step away, come back whenever you want, because there's not really a continual thread. These are just great 8-page stories. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Batman Black and White Volume 1. I'll probably go through the whole series, kind of keep this format, give a quick synopsis, a little bit, touch on a little bit of the stories, and then kind of leave it up for you to read because these are all good. And plus, I don't want to keep you holding for like an hour on telling a story, review on these books. Because, again, there's 20 stories in this one, and we only hit on 4 of them. So, we're going to leave a lot meat on the bones. But highly recommend, again, 5 out of 5. Highly recommend picking up at least Batman Black and White Volume 1. So, until next video, which will probably be Batman 50, probably, good chance. If not, we'll revisit another Bat Classic, might do Volume 2, might go to another one. We'll see. So, until next video, take care.